This essay contains, and will contain light plot spoilers and heavy world-building spoilers for the game Disco Elysium. Like many other games, Disco Elysium begins with waking up. Unlike other games, in Disco Elysium, you never stop. I could sit for hours and list games that begin with your character getting out of bed. A yawn, a stretch, an NPC over-explaining something as an unfamiliar house comes into focus around you. Waking up is a useful narrative trope, giving the game a convenient excuse to dump context on you. Because when we wake up lost. How many times have you found yourself blinking your eyes open, only to realize you're not where or when you thought you were? As your mind rises from its dream stupor, you often flash through addled memories of places you've woken up before. A childhood bedroom, the hotel from your last vacation, a cramped college dorm. The sun streaming through the window briefly takes on the hue of a different sun, filtered through different air, hitting your eyes at a different time. You have forgotten where you are. My body, still too heavy with sleep to move, would endeavor to construe from the pattern of its tiredness the position of its various limbs, in order to deduce therefrom the direction of the wall, the location of the furniture, to piece together and give a name to the house in which it lay. Its memory, the composite memory of its ribs, its knees, its shoulder blades, offered it a series of rooms in which it had at one time or another slept, while the unseen walls, shifting and adapting themselves to the shape of each successive room that it remembered, whirled round it in the dark. This quote comes from the opening pages of Proust's series, À la recherche du temps perdu, translated as In Search of Lost Time, an epic 7-volume novel spanning over 4,000 pages. It begins by waking up lost. The protagonist struggles to figure out where he is, his physical position triggering deep-set memories. He has lain like this here and here and here. The feeling of each bed, the position of each doorway is recalled by his very bones, different places and times swirling around him. He's caught halfway between dreaming and waking, in a strange gray area where the memory blurs, the physical bleeds into the mental, and the past becomes the present. His body is his memory, the objects around him, his thoughts, the city, his mind. The past exists here. This world is built from it, built from the bones of history, constructed by the all-consuming pail. The world of Disco Elysium is built from the past, and your character is nothing but I'm getting ahead of myself. It's only upon actually waking up that you know exactly where and when you are. The real world is often shockingly different from the imagined space in your half-awake mind, your mental concept of your position suddenly displaced by the physical reality surrounding you. In seeing, hearing, feeling the room, you are finally able to locate yourself. This orientation is so natural that Proust describes it as instinctual. When a man is asleep, he has in a circle round him the chain of the hours, the sequence of the years, the order of the heavenly bodies. Instinctively, he consults them when he awakes, and in an instant reads off his own position. Before we begin to move, to interact, to exist, we must place ourselves within our conception of reality, a sort of calibration for the rest of the day. I exist here and now. Video games are simply taking advantage of this instinct to orient you within the world of the game. Your character wakes up and you're already naturally searching for where and when and what you are. As you search for clues to grab onto, the opening of these games mirrors the experience of actually waking, physical facts slotting into place over mental assumptions. You are waking up and placing yourself within the world of the game. Disco Elysium begins with nothing. A black screen that gives you no information about where or when or what you are. The context most games provide is conspicuously absent, the recognition you expect nowhere to be seen. just inky blackness, forever. Before being defined by what he is, your character is defined by his absence, by his refusal to exist in the world, by the nothingness that consumes him. With just the black screen, there's no physical component to his character, making it impossible for us to picture what he looks like or what he's supposed to be. He clearly doesn't know either. So deep in his own mind, there are no memories that can be triggered by his bones. You are adrift, lost without an anchor, lacking a connection to any physical existence.
There is nothing. You don't have to do anything anymore.
Intruding into the darkness is your character's lowest brain function, a voice labeled ancient reptilian brain roiling out of some monstrous unseen throat. Whoever your character is, he has nothing left but a dim, primal awareness of the world. The most rudimentary sense of existence such as may lurk and flicker in the depths of an animal's conscience. Again, Proust describes waking the same way. Separated from the world, from his own body, from anything to grab onto, there are no coherent thoughts for your character to have. You know nothing, you feel nothing, you think nothing. Of course, nothing is eternal, and the game can't be a black screen forever. This darkness must, somehow, come to an end. When experiencing a similar nothingness upon waking, Proust describes being saved from it by memory, the feeling almost divine. Memory would come like a rope down from heaven to draw me up out of the abyss of not being, from which I could never have escaped myself. Proust gets the privilege of a pleasant reminder, carrying him up through time and space until he gently lands in the present. Your character in Disco Elysium does not have this luxury. As he begins to remember himself, stumbling through his twisted, spiraling thoughts, it becomes clear that there is something he is avoiding, some ancient memory that will break him if he so much as glances at it, shattering his feelingless nothing into bright, sharp shards of pain, dragging him screaming back into the physical world. Mother, help me, there's a head attached to my neck, and I'm in it. You are woken not by a beautiful savior from the past, but by the insistent, deafening roar of a car engine, splitting your void wide open, shoving the outside world down your throat. You and your character see the broken bottles in the trashed hotel room come into focus at the same time, wincing in unison at the pose he slept in, pain evident from his first stumbling movements. The mental has collided with the physical, the shards of pain lodged like landmines between his thoughts, following him into the world, infecting his body as well. He is as lost as you, looking around the hotel room with the same non-recognition. It seems waking, in this case, has triggered no space-time positioning, no instinctual wayfinding. The process of waking up has barely begun. As you fumble your way around the room, you struggle not in spite of the character, but with him, knowing as much as he does about the hellish body and mind you both now inhabit. Though the game cannot give you his splitting hangover, it can pass on his confusion, his fear, and his utter helplessness. Your next actions will not be logical, driven by your meta-knowledge of how video games work, cued by little numbers in the corner of the screen. You will stumble. You will fall. Your character will say, "I don't know my name," and no text box will pop up inviting you to write it. He does not know his own name. Perhaps unsurprisingly, your character is missing large chunks of himself. He doesn't remember how he got here or what he was doing last night. In fact, he knows as much as you. And you don't know shit. There are only disparate things in the present you can grasp at. Your clothes scattered around the room, the broken tape player, the mirror with your disgusting face peering back at you. You have no memories of the past, no conceptions of the future. The philosopher St. Augustine once theorized that nothing other than the present exists. If the past refers to things that were, and the future refers to things that will be, then the only thing that is the present. This doesn't mean that we can't conceive of the past or future, but rather that we can only conceive of them. They're nothing more than constructs in our mind, filtered through the reality of the present. The past is nothing more than memory, reconstructed each time we recall it, never quite the same as it was. The future is only extrapolations of the present, informed by our knowledge of the past. We know the sun will rise tomorrow, as it did yesterday and the day before that. We know the clock on the wall will continue ticking just as it is now. We know you will take another breath. Disco Elysium takes this logic to the extreme. Your character knows nothing but the present. Everything in his past or his future must be understood through the clues surrounding him right now. The shattered window hints at what happened last night. The broken bottles gesture at why. But even with this, you don't know what lies outside that door. You cannot remember it. What will greet you when you step outside? A hallway? The sky? A lover? An enemy? A friend? No one at all? Nothing in Disco Elysium exists outside of the moment you are experiencing now. There are only the memories you hazily reconstruct backward, the expectations you carefully deduce forward. This, right now, is the only reality that exists. Your surroundings are as alien as your own mind. The spaces in your brain as surprising as the shadowed doorways and crumbling bricks. The people who remember you that you've never seen before. The woman outside your hotel room laughs at your advances and gestures at the fact that you've been doing nothing but drinking for the past 3 days. The cafeteria manager, shoots you dirty glances across the bar, fiddling with a taxidermied bird with a broken wing. If you ask about it, he grumbles sarcastically about what a great cop you are. As you talk to these characters, different voices in your head speak up, offering bits of advice and clues to your past. Visual calculus helps you analyze a broken window, but logic fails to identify a car. You don't know what city you're in, but once you find out, Encyclopedia remembers obscure facts about its history. The tiny bits of information the NPCs give you feed into your internal thoughts, creating a loop where you slowly discover the limits of your own mind. Each fact you can or cannot recall is a hint at your past. When did you learn to read someone's body language like this? How can you feel the city breathing beneath your feet? Why do you know so much about drugs? As you explore the world around you, memories gradually trigger. Your past slowly grows clearer. Different parts of your mind speak up from where they've been buried under numbing layers of alcohol. Exploring the world becomes an excruciatingly slow exercise in waking up. Perhaps the most straightforward way this manifests is through the objects found in the game world. Unlike objects in most games, which have a short description of their attributes along with any relevant stats, things in Disco Elysium talk to you. This dialogue generally functions as a way to narrate your noticings about the world without relying on a specific voice in your character's head. But it's definitely a choice to format these thoughts the same way as NPCs speaking, to have your character ask the objects questions as if they can respond. It makes the objects in Disco Elysium feel alive in a unique way, a way that the other NPCs in the game don't seem to be able to access. Your partner will sometimes express confusion as you silently talk with inanimate objects for minutes on end, gathering information, finding details, reassuring, or beating up a mailbox.
You are really just talking to yourself. It is quite silly.
But it's not that simple, because in these dialogues you are constantly learning things, both about the objects and about yourself. The conversations become a way for your internal thoughts to become external, for your repressed memories and emotions to be reflected back at you, another way for you to explore your own mind. These objects are continually revealing you to yourself. In the paper, The Object Gives Rise to Thought, Hermeneutics of Objects in Disco Elysium, game studies scholar Michał Kwasinski argues that through these conversations, Disco Elysium illustrates a reversible relationship with an object which initiates and participates in the character's cathartic reflection on his own identity. The object gives absolution, gives rise to thoughts about shared mutual conditions, and offers a reflection of the self and others. The beat-up mailbox is a metaphor for your own abused body. The regal statue in the center of town triggers a contemplation of revolutions past. A piece of apricot chewing gum reminds you of your lost love, the scent lingering for the rest of the game. The physical realities of these items remember, even if your mind does not. These objects open up a space for exploring memory, as Kwasinski puts it. The things you hold in your hands entwined with your deepest thoughts, your past and their pasts inextricable from each other, each gradually growing clearer. But bigger than any individual object, this continual uncovering of your own psyche mirrors the very genre of the game and your exploration of the city itself. In the paper Disco Elysium as Gothic Fiction, media and communications professor Julian Novitz argues that Gothic literature looks backward, obsessed with the past and its echoes. This past then destabilizes the main character, taking away their control. This level of looking back inherently lends itself to the detective genre that Disco Elysium falls into, in which characters extrapolate into the past from the ruins of the present, piecing together robberies and murders by the bloody trail they leave behind. However, Novitz continues, classic detective stories are logical and objective, the past becoming crystal clear through the collection of clues, while the Gothic is typically more interested in the experience of the uncertainty and disorientation caused by the past's uncanny influence on the present. In Disco Elysium, you explore your own mind as you explore the city, finding abandoned shops that spark forgotten memories, locked doors that make you run up against the walls in your own head. Talking to a new NPC can present a clue to the murder of a week ago as easily as it can uncover an intriguing dialogue option that reveals something about yourself, a hidden desire or obscured piece of your past slipping out before you even realize what's happening. Alcohol may wipe your memories, but nothing can paint over the blood on these streets. You and the city you roam are equally haunted by the past. Foreclosures and disrepair mirroring the drug-damaged neurons in your brain, the physical affecting the mental, the past infecting the present. Everything is entangled. Philosopher Jacques Derrida introduced the theory of hauntology, the idea that the present is haunted by specters of the past, ideologies and cultural practices that persist through generations. Novitz uses the term as well, focusing on Derrida's explanation of memory, how reliving the past inherently brings it back into the present. This is similar to Augustine's idea that we can only experience the past through the lens of the present. Both Derrida and Augustine agree that memory is something active and flexible, an emotionally charged reliving of history. Exploring the world of Disco Elysium, your character frequently relives both his own memories and those of the city around him. Seeing a wall pocked with bullet holes conjures an image of the prisoners executed there, the memory sharp enough to take away a point of your health. Seriously, in what other game can you take damage by looking at bullet holes? That's epic. But here we are again, with the memory of the past affecting the reality of the present. Whether or not the past exists according to Augustine, it is certainly shaping our lives today. As Novitz continues, the literal and metaphorical hauntings of the Gothic bring the past into the present, and both the protagonist and the audience are made to feel its presence. The player's passage through the game is essentially hauntological. There is nowhere in this world where you can escape the echoes of your past actions, the ghosts of your past failures, the overwhelming built-up stain on the city itself. There might not be any haunting from the past so obvious as Disco Elysium's Pale. It's not obvious in the game itself. Knowledge of the Pale is hidden behind obscure dialogue trees and strange checks, the information you get based on feelings and intuition as much as it is based on fact. But here's what we know. The world of Disco Elysium is in the shape of a fractured sphere. Each landmass is divided from every other by a vast sea of a substance known as the Pale, which is slowly dissolving the world from the inside out. It already covers 72% of the surface, and it grows every year. To try and describe the Pale is a futile effort.
Achromatic, odorless, featureless. The Pale is the enemy of matter and life. It is not like any other, or anything in the world. It is the transition state of being into nothingness.
Deep within the Pale, logic and reason break down entirely, to the point where even numbers stop working. People who come back out are forever changed, their minds infected by what they've seen, if they come out at all. Because the Pale is the past. The dialectical materialists of Disco Elysium believe the Pale consists of past information, that it is the past in material form. The world of Disco Elysium is quite literally being consumed by specters of the past, the people haunted by history. It doesn't get more hauntological than this. But if we're treating the past as something tangible, something physical, what would that mean for Disco Elysium's understanding of time? The past is not figuratively touching the present through memories or history. The past is physically consuming it. It is existing alongside the present, more real than anything Derrida talked about. The Pale, as nonsensical as it is, should be measurable, quantifiable, able to be understood through science. And here's where I start talking about quantum physics. Karen Barad is a physicist who has written some of the most interesting papers I have ever read. In Troubling Times and Ecologies of Nothingness, Returning, Remembering, and Facing the Incalculable, they lay out a theory of quantum time. Now, look, it's not important that you understand the specifics of the explanation that I'm about to give you. But I did take physics during high school, so hopefully I can communicate the general idea. Quantum physics is the study of matter smaller than atoms, things like electrons, quarks, bosons, etc. You may have heard the idea that quantum entities can be both a particle and a wave, depending on whether they're being observed or not. The classic way of proving this is with the double-slit experiment. Tiny slits are cut in a piece of material, and the pattern the entities make going through these slits is observed on a facing piece of material. Say we take a bunch of particles and fire them at the slits. If we say this axis is the density of particles hitting the slits, or hitting the other material, the pattern we expect to see mirrors the two slits. Every other particle will have been stopped by the material. However, if you shine a flashlight at the slits, and they're small enough, you will instead see an interference pattern. The graph here is showing more and less light, caused by individual waves of light diffracting outward from the slits and interfering with each other. This is called a diffraction pattern, and can only be created by waves. But here's the thing, particles can make diffraction patterns too. If we're observing which slit the particles go through, they will make this two-slit pattern that I mentioned earlier. But as soon as we stop observing them, they make a diffraction pattern, acting like waves. Barad says this is because a given particle can be in a state of superposition. That is to say, it is existing indeterminately in multiple places at once, allowing it to act like a continuous wave, even though it's just one point. The particle has no true position, and if we try to measure its position, it collapses into one place, once again behaving like a particle. Richard Feynman, a Nobel-winning physicist, explained this diffraction pattern as the superposition or combination of all possible paths of the particle. To overly simplify, by calculating the probability of each path the particle can take and laying them all on top of each other, the resulting pattern is the diffraction pattern. Barad points out how this pattern is a sum of all possible paths. They all coexist and mutually contribute to the overall pattern. Remember this coexistence. Okay, if you thought this was weird already, here's where it starts getting really bizarre. If we take this spatial diffraction pattern and start to move the slits, say by rotating them on a disk that the particles are continually fired at, we can say the particles are encountering slits separated by space and by time. This creates temporal or time diffraction, showing that the particle is superimposed through space and time. Barad says, a given particle can be in a state of indeterminately existing at multiple times. For example, yesterday, today, tomorrow. The diffraction pattern is, in this case, a manifestation of different times bleeding through one another. Okay, the physics explanation is over. You can all relax while we go back to talking about Disco Elysium, or whatever it was. The point I'm getting at here is that, well, most of Disco Elysium exists within theories of time that make sense to us, with strong divisions between the present and the past and the future. The Pale blatantly destroys that understanding of time. If it is indeed the past made physical, a real manifestation of thoughts and ideas and history existing alongside the present-day world, it defies classical understanding. But by turning to quantum theories of time, it begins to make sense. The Pale, like these temporally diffracted particles, is multiple times at once, the past bleeding into the present, the many histories of the world fusing and melding and mixing together into one vast superposition onto reality. To quote Barad again, quantum superpositions open up possibilities for understanding how the new and the old, indeed multiple temporalities, are diffractively threaded through and are inseparable from one another. In the world of Disco Elysium, memory and the past are not something separate from the present reality. Rather, these times are woven together in the very fabric of the world, entangled in its creation, existing alongside each other in a terrifying, necessary contradiction. The world of Disco Elysium coexists in multiple times at once, each fractured time-space a small part of the overall whole, a tiny component of the impossible superimposed form this reality takes. The Pale is this superposition concentrated into a single entity, something that can be named and described. It is memory made physical. To continue reading Barad, memory is not merely a subjective capacity of the human mind. Rather, human and mind are part of the land-timescape, space-time mattering of the world. Memory is written into the worlding of the world. The Pale's physical memory bleeds outward into the rest of the game. It becomes fundamental. From the groaning protests of your body, to the items you interact with, to the city you wander, everyone and everything in this world is soaked in history, immersed in the past, memory leaking out of cracks and pores and tear ducts, the present not strong enough to hold it back. This world is not merely haunted by ghosts, it is being consumed by them. Consumed by every history pressing into it, by the irreconcilable contradiction of its very existence. The past is entangled with everything. Disco Elysium does not exist without the past. You, this city, this world need it, even as it destroys you from the inside out. You cannot get rid of it without getting rid of yourself. Nowhere is this clearer than with the dead body. The body in Disco Elysium is disgusting. Hanging from the tree for over a week, rot drips out of its mouth, worms its way down its sides. You can have a conversation with it, ask it about its past, where it came from, who it was. It won't answer, or it doesn't know. It doesn't matter. One look at the corpse, and it's obvious this is someone with no future, someone whose past is rotting away as we speak, fading into the eternal melange of the Pale, never to be known again. It could be you. You're close enough already. Your body rotting from the inside out, the alcohol and drugs you took burning holes through your stomach and your mind. The corpse, in endless, dreamless sleep, and you, fighting to wake up for one day more. Even before my brain, hesitating at the threshold of times and shapes, had reassembled the circumstances, my body would recall. Recall it will, spasming and fainting and retching as your memories are made physical. Rot of the past becomes rot of the body, alcohol and drugs, reopened scar tissue, black mold on dead skin. Your body is disintegrating from the force of your mind, but you need them both to know yourself again, to search for your past, to stumble into your future. You need them to wake up. The physical memory that Disco Elysium explores would be impossible if the game oriented you from the beginning, if it allowed you to understand this existence, know your past, clear the contradictions, wake up. But Disco Elysium forces you to linger in this half-awake state, one foot in your mind and the other on the streets, caught between the past and the present, the physical and the mental, the awake and the asleep. Your memories are buried not in your own neurons, but in the objects you touch, the blood and brick of the city, in the rhythm of the world's breathing, in the pale tearing it apart. The past haunts you as it haunts this reality, history pressing in on all sides, the weight of it all nearly unbearable. You are only one man. But this is where you live, in this in-between state. Half awake, half alive, half real. What does it feel like to touch the past?